Okay, so this one I'm going to call it Pet Rat. This is what I think I called it. Pretty sure it's a rat, but again, I'll go through the dream. It's actually a really old dream. This is the 10th of the 12th, 2024. So bearing in mind, it is mid-March of 2026. It's a long time ago. This should have been recorded actually in book 1. So like my first book. And I'm halfway through book 5 now. So this gives you some sort of an idea of how far back this is in comparison to my other dreams. And basically the main part of the dream, I put here at the time is just unknown to me. It just seemed a bit odd and I disregarded it. So that's why it didn't go into season 1, because it's a bit of a strange one. There was a part also related to Tyson Fury as well, which again is probably even stranger. but it was really odd because I actually had 2 Tyson Fury dreams in a row. The other one, again, this is in season 1, is called the UK and USA relationship trouble, or something like that. It's called. It's got Tyson Fury in it, and funnily enough, we have got a lot of UK USA relationship trouble now. We didn't at the time. This is 2024, December 2024 when this happened. Nothing really then, but there certainly is now at present. Anyway, so how this dream started then. So there was a mouse or a rat which was being kept as a pet, and I was unhappy with the fact that it was being kept in a cage, and I wanted to let it out. No one was playing with it or giving it any kind of attention whatsoever, or even feeding it. It seemed like, and so I let it out, and it communicated with me that it had been around about 48 hours since it was last fed, which I thought for a small animal like that, like a little mouse or a rat, is probably a really long time. So I gave it some food and it started running around again. But again, no one was paying attention to it at all. Okay. Now, this is something in reality that's always been my concern. The kids wanting pets. And I've always sort of said, well, look, but I'd be the one who would end up having to clean it all out, depending on what it is, take it for walks or play with it or whatever it is. And I just don't have time for it. So this kind of played out very similar to how I could imagine a pet would be in our household. So anyway, so no one was paying attention to it. I was following the rat because, as I said, I let it out, and so I was following it. But I was kind of following it around the house just to make sure that it wasn't going to start causing trouble, as in, whether it was going to poo anywhere or whether it was going to start biting through things and stuff like that. Because we had, in reality, we had a couple of rabbits, and every now and then, we'd let them in the house and they could just have a little bit of a run around in the house just to stretch their legs out a bit, because obviously they're in a hutch, so we used to put them in our front room, they'd run around a bit and stuff like that. And one of our rabbits used to quite often start biting wires. And so that's, in this dream, I was very concerned about the same sort of thing. So I went over to the sofa and I kind of lied down, just sort of chilling out, really, it looks like, while I was letting this rat just sort of whiz around everywhere and have a bit of fun. But in this weird in-between sort of bit where I'm lying down, Tyson Fury walks in through the door, and he comes in and he kind of lies down in between my legs. So if you imagine, he's kind of got his head on my sort of stomach, I guess, and he's lying down on the sofa. Super weird. As I said, this is the 10th, and on the 9th, so 10th of December, on the 9th of December, I had one which was that UK trouble sort of one. So I was like, why is Tyson Fury in my dreams? But I was lying down, and even weirder, as I said, I was stroking his head, his bald head. Super, super weird. I'm pretty sure it was still me, in that it was me in this dream who was sort of lying down and doing all this. But he started talking about principalities, basically Christian terminology, really, aspects. Started talking about the bronze bomber, so Deyontay Wilder, obviously someone who we had 3 fights with. And I think it was 3 anyway, but we were about to get into discussions about ancestral spirits, principalities, etc. And then I just woke up. So it was one of those, as you can hear, bit of a mix of all sorts of stuff, really. And I wasn't overly clear. as to what the message was, whether it made sense. The whole UK USA one, I felt like I got that pretty much nailed as to what I thought the meaning was on that. And but this one, I was kind of like, I don't really need to add it. I don't know if it's really makes much sense. So what were my initial thoughts? Well, I put very strange in that Tyson Fury was in 2 dreams in a row with no reason for him to be in my dream at all. I've not talked about him. I've not seen him in anything. Very bizarre. Why? As I said, in the UK USA relationship one, it seemed like he represented the UK in that, I feel. But again, you'd have to watch that to understand my thought process for that. What he represents in here, not sure, but I'm going to take us on a little bit of a route here. So I found this as a discarded dream, basically. This doesn't happen very often, actually, where there's one that I put in, like my library, my sort of dream library, let's say, on my phone. I've got a section for dreams that get logged, so I log them in the book. Ones that actually, and then they end up obviously going to film sometimes, not all the time. And then there's ones that just get dropped. So sometimes they don't even make it into the dream book and they're just on my phone. This is one of those. So it didn't actually end up in the book. I just left it on my phone, had a bit of a read of it, thought, nah, I'll get rid of that. Put it into the drop folder. Then I resumed all of those, and sort of looked at them again just to see if there was anything really in there that I could have missed on season 1 that maybe had some meaning, and maybe I would have more light on it now because of maybe my understanding was increased and now that dream makes sense. Okay, so there are ones that I've done that, and I've mentioned that in this season actually, where there's one that was to do with a beach ball, and I kept on dropping it, and then I sort of got a confirmation when there's something that came on TV at the time. I just dropped it that involved a beach ball, and then I had a follow-up dream which had the beach ball in it, and then it all made sense as to why I was getting these kind of feelings of don't drop it. It was kind of the message I was getting. Anyway, moving on to this. So January 2025 thoughts. January 25? I wonder whether I mean 2026 there potentially, because that's when I was writing this in here. I'm pretty sure I must be. Yeah, I mean 2026. Obviously, it's only January. I was just getting used to it being 2026. So yeah, I had a feeling I had seen a rat in my dream book. So this is that dream book I mentioned, Divinity Code, which I'll put in the description. But I happen to remember scrolling through, because sometimes I do that. I'm looking for something else, let's say an S, and then I'm looking for, I don't know, whatever you can think up. And then I may, as I'm going through and I get to R's or whatever, I'll scroll through and, oh, rat's in there. Okay, what does that mean? Because I remember having that in a dream. And I'll sometimes maybe explore that a little bit and go back to what that dream was and then think, oh, does it now make sense? So I sort of did that. So I had a feeling that, as I said, I'd seen rat in the book before. So I quickly opened up, find out what the meaning was, to see if it made any kind of sense at all. And even aspects of the Tyson Fury sort of bit sort of made sense as well. So rat, what does a rat mean? Well, it can mean an unbeliever or an unclean animal. It can mean an evil spirit. It can mean a plague, of course. Someone who spreads disease by words. So they're the 4, I think it's just 4 anyway. They're the 4 I've listed. So the rat represents a demon potentially. Okay, so as in number 2 on there was an evil spirit. So I thought I kind of plugged that into what this dream is all about, and then it started to make sense. Because if that rat means an evil spirit, an evil spirit, so a demon, basically. So the rat represents a demon, potentially that no one can see. Well, that makes sense because it's a demon. The pet that no one sees and so doesn't feed and doesn't let out. That I do I do because I can see this pet, which happens to be a demon, and my actions actually lead to this thing getting out of its prison, which is, of course, the cage, which I've seen it in a cage and thought, oh, that's a bit harsh. Let's let it out. So as soon as I feed it, let's say, if we're using like a thought process around demons, let's say, if I was feeding a demon, what would I be doing? Well, I'd probably be sinning, wouldn't I? That's what would be feeding that. So let's say as soon as I start feeding it, I would imagine it does what a rat does. So it destroys. It goes out after, in this dream, it goes out and after like eating wiring and stuff like that. So it's another confirmation of it being, I think, representing a demon, is that when we let it out, no one reacted to it. Nobody saw it either. So that's what I think it's talking about. So I think it's quite potentially here, quite a harsh message really against me, in that maybe any certain sins I could do potentially would then unleash these different types of demons and stuff like that. Okay, so I think that's what it could mean. This is back, of course, in 2024, but of course I'm writing about it now. So is the message actually a delayed message for now? I'm not sure. Right, bear with me 1 second. Okay, so we've got the Tyson Fury aspect then. So the Tyson Fury aspect, well, we were talking about the spirit world as well, weren't we? So that helped to sort of gather that idea together. We're talking about the spirit world. We're talking about principalities. We're talking about ancestral spirits and all of these kind of things. There are also things that were kind of mentioned in an interview between Tyson Fury and Deontay Wilder. So I've actually put this in a video before. I can't remember why, because it wasn't a Tyson Fury dream, I don't think. I must have been talking about principalities and stuff like that. I'll see if I can find it, and I'll add that in just so you know what I'm talking about. But that's why I thought kind of tied it together. That Tyson Fury aspect to talk about the spirit world, the demonic, which would make no sense in isolation, but now with the rat aspect and being potentially understood here, it's confirmation of it being the right interpretation, I would say. So the boldness aspect, so obviously Tyson Fury is bold anyway, but the boldness aspect I have had a couple of times recently in other dreams. So this is, of course, is me writing this in January 2026 when I have an awareness of other dreams that I've had boldness in. I have had that in one that's called, so boldness would be the 10 Kings, which is part of some kind of series. I'm not sure which series that is called, but I'll find that. I'll put that in the description. And there's another one as well, which I think is Inside Job. I think that's the right one. It's called Inside Job, and that's got an assassin that's bold, partially bold, in exactly the same way as the 10 Kings person is partially bald. It's got hair around the sides, but most of his head is completely bald. Okay, so that's the boldness kind of thing I thought of, and I thought, oh, that's weird. I've had at least a couple of other dreams as well that had bald people in it, and I wonder if that's got whether that means something or not. But unsure of the meaning in this context. So the dream book basically says a demon. Oh, okay. So somebody who has a bald head, it says, can be a demon if they're acting malevolently. So they're behaving in a kind of like a violent kind of way, a negative sort of way. But he was actually a godly man in this one, and so in that we were sort of talking about principalities in a negative way, and all that kind of aspect, and there is a. Yeah, there we just mentioned it. Yeah, and there was a pre-match interview between Tyson Fury and Deontay Wilder where they're talking about God, that kind of stuff, and how my God's stronger than your God, that kind of thing. Is basically what they're talking about. So I think that's just about all there was really on that one. I just found it interesting as to the symbology there of the rat and what it was doing and stuff like that, and that what we really need to do, I suppose, is keep. Yeah, is keep our sinning, let's say, to an absolute minimum, because that can in itself invite in demonic spirits to do stuff, which potentially does link up with the attack I had last night. So I'm sure there's no coincidence I'm going through this. Is because, and I wasn't sure about this, so drunkenness. Drunkenness is mentioned a lot in the Bible, especially the New Testament. talking about don't be drunk, don't, be sober, all that kind of stuff. It mentions that many, many times. So I'll list some of the scriptures that talk about that specifically. I happened to have a few beers left last night. I've only got a few, literally a few, and I had all three. I wasn't drunk. I wasn't actually drunk, but I remember when I was having them, normally I limit myself to one, maybe two. But they're only small bottles, and so I decided to have all three. And as I said, I wasn't actually drunk, but I did have a thought when I was actually having them as to, I hope this isn't seen as I hope God doesn't see this as a major negative that I've decided to have a few drinks. That's what I was thinking. And then I had a demonic attack that evening. So I'm not sure if that's connected at all, but I do think obviously that anything that we do where we're sinning can create a legal right for a demon to actually come and, torment you, harass you in some way, if you've opened doors in which, sort of spiritual doors, let's say, that enable them to come in and do that. So potentially I did in that. As soon as I had the attack, I prayed, went through all of the kind of aspects of shutting doors and all that kind of stuff. So I think that's all really there is there to learn from that bit. Unless you see something else within there that maybe is talking about other aspects, but it was just a little one that I've just been waiting really just to put out there as to something that I thought might be of interest to people. But that's it, I think, on that one. I'm going to find something else now to film. There's not a huge amount left to film. Not now, not for this season. So won't be too long, and the season will be finished. But I'll link in those. So obviously, always every single video, look at the description. You'll find all the scriptures that I've actually read out will be in there. All the scriptures I've even hinted at, I'll put in there, and then anything where I was very, very vague, there's drunkenness and stuff like that, I'll still put that in there, but it'll be in the mention section. And I normally put a little title like drunkenness, and then I'll list some scriptures below, all that sort of stuff that relate to it. But I'll list those couple of dreams that I've had that relate to boldness. I'll put that in there, and I'll see if I can dig out. It's only a little YouTube short, of Deyontay Wilder and Tyson Fury, discussing obviously the boxing match coming up, and my God being better than your God is basically what it was. The clip I actually found online isn't quite. I saw the extended interview, but I couldn't really find that. But you'll be able to find that again. Look on YouTube. You'll find the full interview if you want, because there's a lot more to it actually than what's in the short, given it's just a short. Okay, we'll leave that there. All right.